If you are doing these weird coping mechanisms after narcissistic abuse, you need to stop. While they can be helpful at the moment, they can ruin your mental health further in the long run. Let's face it, dealing with narcissistic abuse is like trying to navigate a maze blindfolded. You might grab onto anything that feels safe or familiar, even if it's not good for you. Some of these coping strategies might seem quirky or unusual, and that's because they often are. Today, we'll explore these odd coping mechanisms, why we turn to them, and how to recognize when it's time to ditch the band-aids and find healthier ways to heal. Are you ready for number 1? Biting nails or picking skin? When you're dealing with the aftermath of narcissistic abuse, it can leave you feeling so tense and anxious that you start looking for ways to release that pressure. One weird but common coping mechanism is biting your nails or picking at your skin. It's like your body is trying to manage the stress by keeping your hands busy, even if it's not the healthiest way to cope. Psychologist Dr. David Clough explains that self-soothing behaviors like these often pop up when you're overwhelmed and have no outlet for your emotions. To overcome this, practice healthier coping strategies like mindfulness, deep breathing, or engaging in a calming activity to redirect your anxious energy. Let's talk about number 2, over-justifying purchases. If you've been through narcissistic abuse, you might catch yourself over-justifying your purchases as a way to dodge that pesky guilt that creeps in. It happens because the constant guilt from past experiences can make you feel like you don't deserve to spend money on yourself. According to life coach Mel Robbins, we often justify our actions to avoid facing our true feelings. So, by creating these elaborate reasons for buying things, you're trying to permit yourself to enjoy life without the weight of guilt dragging you down. Let me teach you something. Focus on recognizing your self-worth and practicing mindful spending by evaluating whether a purchase truly adds value to your life without the need for excessive justification. Let's move on to number 3. Rehearsing how to respond in future conversations. When you've been through narcissistic abuse, one of the strange coping mechanisms that might pop up is talking to yourself, like practicing how you'll respond in future conversations. It's a way of regaining control after feeling powerless for so long. You rehearse different scenarios in your head, imagining what you'll say because you're trying to protect yourself from the emotional traps you've been caught in before. Psychologist Dr. Ramani Duvasula says, narcissistic abuse makes you hypervigilant, always anticipating the next move. So, by talking to yourself, you're prepping for the battle that you expect might come. Listen closely. Practice being present and authentic in the moment. Allow yourself to respond naturally instead of trying to predict every possible scenario. Now, let's continue to number 4. Developing unusual eating habits. If you've experienced narcissistic abuse, you might find yourself developing some unusual eating habits as a way to cope. Maybe you eat only certain foods or have odd eating times that don't fit your old routine. It can happen because you're trying to create a sense of control in your life when everything else feels chaotic. As author Dr. Jennifer Freed says, when we feel lost, we often seek comfort in the familiar, including our food choices. So, while it might seem strange to stick to those specific foods, it's just your way of finding a bit of comfort and stability in a turbulent emotional landscape. Take note of this. Focus on gradually re-establishing a balanced and flexible meal routine while exploring new foods to restore a sense of normalcy and control in a healthier way. You shouldn't miss number 5. Compulsively writing lists of tasks or reminders. After narcissistic abuse, life can feel so chaotic that you start searching for ways to regain control, even in small ways. One weird coping mechanism some people develop is writing lists constantly. You might find yourself compulsively jotting down tasks or reminders just to feel like you have a grip on things. Therapist Dr. Shari Steins explains that this need for order comes from living in constant unpredictability, and making lists helps create a sense of safety in a world that feels anything but stable. Consider this tip. Aim to simplify your approach by prioritizing a few key tasks each day and allowing for spontaneity to reduce the need for excessive control. Are you still up for number 6? Avoiding mirrors or anything that reflects self-image. If you've experienced narcissistic abuse, it's common to avoid mirrors, as they can trigger memories of harsh criticism and make it difficult to feel good about yourself. As therapist Dr. Tara Well explains, mirrors can be a powerful reminder of our self-image, especially when others' words have distorted that image. By steering clear of mirrors, you're protecting yourself from painful memories and feelings of inadequacy. To combat this, practice self-compassion and gradually confront your reflection in a safe and positive space. Remind yourself that others' judgments do not define your worth. Let's keep it moving to number 7. Obsessively checking locks. If you've experienced narcissistic abuse, you may find yourself obsessively checking locks as a way to regain a sense of safety. This ritual can reassure you that everything is okay, especially when your security feels compromised, leading you to twist doorknobs or check window locks repeatedly to calm anxious thoughts. As psychologist Dr. Judith Orloff notes, when we've been through trauma, our brains can become hyper-alert to potential dangers. To combat this behavior, establish a reliable routine that includes a single mindful check, followed by engaging in a calming activity to redirect your focus and reduce anxiety. Here comes number 8. Counting steps or performing small mental calculations. One of the strange yet common ways narcissistic abuse victims cope with anxiety is by counting steps or doing little mental math problems. It's like a brain hack to distract themselves from all that overwhelming stress. When you're feeling anxious, focusing on something as simple as counting can help ground you. As psychologist Dr. John M. Grohol says, when your mind feels chaotic, grounding techniques can create a sense of order. So, while it might seem odd, these small calculations can be a way to regain some control and take a break from the emotional turmoil. To overcome this, try substituting these behaviors with more calming, grounding techniques, such as deep breathing or focusing on your senses to help manage anxiety without relying on distractions. Moving on to number 9. Becoming hyper-sarcastic. When life gets too heavy, we sometimes start to joke about it, right? For victims of narcissistic abuse, this can turn into a coping mechanism where they become super sarcastic. It's like putting up a shield made of wit to protect themselves from emotional pain. As Dr. Judith Orloff puts it, sarcasm can be a way to deflect deeper feelings. When you laugh about something that hurts, it helps create distance from the pain, even if just for a moment. But while humor can be a great way to cope, relying too much on sarcasm can sometimes keep you from dealing with the real issues. So, it's important to remember that while a good laugh is therapeutic, letting yourself feel and process those emotions is just as crucial. Finally, we're down to number 10. Obsessively tracking time during conversations. Obsessively tracking time during conversations, such as frequently glancing at the clock or phone, can be a coping mechanism for victims of narcissistic abuse. It helps them manage anxiety in social situations. They may do this to avoid overstaying or triggering negative reactions from others. As therapist Dr. Nicole Lepere notes, when we've been conditioned to be on high alert, we often become hyper-aware of our surroundings. While being mindful of time is important, it's also essential to be present and enjoy the moment. In wrapping this up, It's clear that dealing with narcissistic abuse can lead to some pretty unusual coping mechanisms. It's important to remember that there's no right way to heal. Everyone's journey is unique. If you or someone you know is navigating this tough terrain, seeking support, whether from friends, family, or professionals, can make a world of difference. Healing might be a messy process, but it's possible. Just remember, you're not alone and brighter days are ahead.